Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. Kia ora, and welcome to the Intercol 2021 SEPA workshop titled, How in the World Do We Get People into Wetlands? We're going to explore that topic today by sharing a range of presentations, case studies, and a live panel discussion. These will consider how do we get people into wetlands in a physical sense, through things like wetland centres, wetland trails and events, and also how do we get people into wetlands in an emotional sense? How do we increase their appreciation and awareness of wetlands through SEPA programs? The term SEPA is an acronym used by the Ramsar Convention to encompass the broad range of ways we engage people in wetland protection, restoration, and wise use via communication, education, participation, and awareness. I'm Karen Denyer from the New Zealand National Wetland Trust, and I would like to briefly introduce you to the people who organised this SEPA workshop. In the centre of the slide, we have Chris Rostron from Wetland Link International, or WELI, which is a global network of wetland education centres coordinated by the Wildfowl and Wetlands Trust in Slimbridge, UK. We also have Christine Prieto, the Ramsar officer of the Hunter Wetlands Centre in Australia, and she has over 25 years of experience in wetland education, so I'm sure there's a lot we can learn from Christine. Now, I would also like to acknowledge two of our colleagues from Fiji, Nunia Thomas Moko and Bindi Rashni, who were instrumental in helping form the workshop design, but unfortunately are unable to be here today. We would also like to thank the panel members who will appear live today, some of you from very unsociable time zones, and we are very appreciative that you've stayed up late or got up early or perhaps even gave up on sleep altogether to be here today. Chris will introduce you to our panelists shortly. Just a quick reminder of our program for the next hour and a half. We'll be starting off with two 10-minute presentations from Christine and Chris, and we'll take questions from the floor if time permits. You can ask questions by typing into the chat function, and our apologies in advance if we don't get to your question. We will then enjoy a number of pre-recorded quick-fire case studies submitted from around the world, and we hope these will inspire projects in your own organisation. After that, it's time for our live panel session, facilitated by Chris Rostron. And again, you can type your questions to the panelists for our live Q&A session. Then we'll finish up with another set of short international case study presentations. So sit back and relax, and I'll now hand over to Christine for her presentation on strategies for connecting people with wetlands.
Good afternoon all. I'm here today representing Hunter Wetlands Centre near Newcastle, Australia, a community-owned and managed urban wetland that has been restored through community participation over many years. The Ramsar Convention promotes participation as a key tool for engagement. Ramsar introduced its first formal education program in 1999. 3 years later, it was reconfirmed at COP8 in Valencia as the Ramsar Communication, Education and Public Awareness Program, and the acronym SEPA came into being. In 2008 at COP10 in Korea, the word participation was added to recognize that wetlands worldwide are very closely connected to people and livelihoods, and involving people directly in their sustainable management delivers mutual benefits to everyone. My presentation will focus on how building wetland appreciation and understanding among volunteers can deliver a significant contribution to wetland management. The Hunter River is the largest coastal catchment in New South Wales, extending up to 75 kilometers from the ocean in certain locations. Conservation sites within the estuary include Hunter Wetlands National Park and Hunter Estuary Ramsar Site, which incorporates Hunter Wetlands Centre. The estuary has many competing needs, including protection of internationally listed wetlands and many species of migratory shorebirds that use mudflats. This conservation work competes with industrial activity, coal export, urbanization, and the normal recreational activities that occur where people live alongside waterways. This range of activities makes the Hunter Estuary one of the most complex estuaries in New South Wales to manage. Hunter Wetlands Centre, Australia, is on the freshwater edge of the estuary. It opened to visitors in 1986 to demonstrate wetland restoration, education, and wise use. It is 43 hectares in total, or approximately 106 acres, and is adjacent to urbanized areas on two sides. Hunter Wetlands Centre is definitely the most managed area of wetlands in the estuary, and also the most accessible. It is staffed by volunteers and is open to the public 7 days a week. This makes it ideal for offering a close-up wetland experience for visitors. The inspiration for our Wetland Centre was a visit to Slimbridge in the UK in 1983 by Professor Max Maddock. Once back in Newcastle, Max initiated a year-long campaign supported by many like-minded community groups to establish a wetland centre for Newcastle. Key to this fundraising was to secure a former wetland site that had been drained and turned into sporting fields. The early cleanup and setup of the very degraded site was delivered by many willing hands and support from industry partners, including our local steel manufacturer, BHP. This image is Hunter Wetlands Centre staff and members celebrating our first World Wetlands Day as a Ramsar site in 2003. At that stage, our site had been open to the public for 16 years, and our work to restore a degraded wetland had been successful enough to meet criteria for Ramsar listing, a great tribute to the vision and commitment of our group. The site was listed based on freshwater wetland values and added to the existing Ramsar site in the estuary as an extension. The listing process was totally led by our members and supporters. In the 30 years that I've been involved with Hunter Wetlands Centre, there have always been volunteers. I myself started as a volunteer. Today, all aspects of our operations are totally dependent on them. Over the years, although many people have continually moved on, a core group of volunteers have stayed, and we have managed to build a body of knowledge and practices that has successfully supported the management of the wetlands over time. Although people arrive on our doorstep for many different reasons, most often without any special expertise, we have found that volunteers can actually become very knowledgeable and comfortable talking wetlands based on their experience on our property. The more they learn, the more valuable they become as part of our management teams. Volunteers need to be introduced early to what the site is all about, how it is a living and ever-changing habitat. It is up to us to find ways to increase their understanding and skills so that we can make the most of their time with us. The overriding challenge, as shown here, is managing the wetlands for their Ramsar listed values while providing an authentic wetland experience for visitors. This is always a balancing act. Sitting under this are three major aspects that we need volunteers to understand and appreciate. The first is accessibility. Most wetlands elsewhere in the estuary are not easy to get to or are on private land, so we regard accessibility on our site as a real asset. Assuring volunteers understand the importance, how rapid changes in water flows can impact on site activities and visitors, is a major focus of their induction and ongoing training. Nothing helps this understanding kick in like a major weather event. While collecting water is what the site is all about, storm conditions and rising water levels can quickly bring down trees, block paths, and completely curtail our operations. Hydrology is another critical area for our volunteer team to recognize and understand. Hydrology makes the wetlands viable and impact on their health and ability to support biodiversity. For volunteers, it is important for them to appreciate where our water comes from and to become familiar with and comfortable with the regular wetting and drying regime on the property. Hydrology is one area where expert advice is critical. For many years, we were just bystanders with little to go on beyond observations. We funded our first study in 2007 to help us understand our hydrology. This has enabled some decisions on infrastructure that would allow more control of water movement in order to protect vulnerable species and habitats. Since then, volunteers have been involved in moving water across the site using pumps and monitoring and operation of floodgates and other infrastructure we have been able to install at key locations on the property. Managing for and around biodiversity is the other major challenge that occupies our management team. Here is a quick list of the biodiversity our site supports. Some wildlife are easily visible, like birds and reptiles, but as our site is designed using natural habitat, most of the wildlife on the site is less visible. While many species use the site for nesting, one species, egrets, dominates and underpins our Ramsar status, so ongoing management is critical. There are 4 species of egrets that nest on our wetlands. Their habitat of choice, swamp paperbarks, have generally declined along the east coast of New South Wales and are now listed as a vulnerable habitat, so our management of this rookery site has become more important. We have 2 species that are more managed and so always accessible to visitors, and volunteers are very involved with these 2 programs. Magpie geese are one of the 2 species of geese native to Australia, and while they are very common in Australia's northern wetlands, such as Kakadu, they are locally extinct elsewhere. Our flock was introduced to the property in the late 80s, and although free to come and go, they have stuck around and expanded. Freckled ducks, likewise, were introduced in the late 80s, along with several zoos and nature reserves, as the whole of Australia attempt to save this rare species. Our small collection is protected by a dedicated enclosure and has produced more ducklings than any other of the other locations. So how do we guide our volunteers to become more knowledgeable and comfortable and therefore more valuable to our management work? We use time, relationships, and a gradual exposure to the world of wetlands. It is all about giving everyone a chance, building some sense of belonging, and a slow but steady introduction to what we do. This works for us because of a very solid group of senior volunteers who drive the culture and work ethic of the group. Some volunteers come with skills, but many do not. Our volunteers are provided with opportunities to learn a range of skills, from practical use of tools to animal husbandry to social activities such as managing canoes for visitors. There is a constant need to enhance the property to safeguard wetland values while maintaining accessibility and infrastructure. Volunteers are always heavily involved in these tasks. There is a constant load of land care related work, and another major example of enhancement is the feral animal-proof fence that now surrounds the entire property, built over approximately 5 years. We aim to engage our visitors in as many ways as we can to showcase what wetlands are all about. Volunteers are very involved in greeting and advising visitors upon arrival. Knowing what is happening on any day in the wetlands and what is available for visitors is a top priority for them. Guides are especially critical for visitors, even when paths are obvious and signage is good. Some volunteers that become familiar with our site become confident enough to show and share with visitors or help transport them around the wetlands. Luckily, wetlands are great teachers. So whatever volunteers may be doing, the wetlands and wildlife are all around them, doing their thing. People that are spending time in wetlands on a regular basis can go from knowing nothing about wetlands to understanding and appreciating their changing nature. Engaging volunteers directly in managing our wetlands builds their appreciation for the wetlands at the same time, and at the same time allows us to meet the daily responsibilities in managing a wetland site for wildlife and visitors. We really would not be where we are today without them. Thank you.
Hello everybody, my name is Chris Rostron. I'm the International Engagement Manager at the Wildfowl and Wetlands Trust. You can see our first wetland centre here in the background at Slimbridge in the southwest of England, and that's where I'm normally based. I'm here today to talk to you about wetland education centres as SEPA delivery tools, and we'll cover some of the things that we know from our wetland centres here in the UK, and also from working on wetlands across the globe as part of our Wetland Link international programme. So what exactly is a wetland centre? We have a very broad definition of what a wetland centre might be, and effectively it's any wetland site where SEPA activities are carried out. So how you are engaging local people with wetlands is the most important thing, and really the format of the wetland centre is secondary quite often to this. So you can see some examples on the screen here, the first of which is the architect design of a wetland centre here, and this kind of shows, I guess, the classic design of what a wetland centre might include. So it's got a viewing platform, it's got an entrance ramp, it has a schoolroom, it also has an area for refreshments, a small restaurant, and toilets, and all of that kind of thing that you might find in a classic wetland centre. On the top right, ABC Tota is a small NGO running activities for a high Andean lake in Colombia, and they don't have any built structure at all on their site. In fact, they use mostly their website, which helps people by giving information about the sites, providing maps and access information, showing what you can see, and giving you contacts of people that would be able to help you. They also run activities on the wetland site as well. So from that perspective, you can see they're delivering a lot of the SEPA activities just without any built infrastructure and at a particular site. On the bottom left, again, some of our colleagues from Africa, and they are working on delivering lots of kind of campaigning and local engagement activities, not necessarily through a specific wetland organisation, but rather through a community group and civil society organisation that's interested in environmental issues. So they work regularly at one site, they deliver a lot of engagement activities, pulling in schools and other local groups and local farmers, etc. And they are equally, counted as a wetland centre because they spend a lot of their time promoting that. We quite often think about how you can have the software and the hardware of a wetland centre. I'd like to think of wetland centres having those things. So hardware would be the built infrastructure of the wetland centre, and so that would include the buildings, the restaurants, the boardwalks, all of those sorts of things, the signage, those things that don't change necessarily. And the software is more about the people who work there, running activities, running different things for different people, different programs, and different amounts of information or presentations that are happening at the site. Finally, wetland centres, again, what they are good at doing, or they should be, is managing this interface between people and wetlands. Quite often, if you have a wetland, it's very sensitive. The wildlife needs to be undisturbed to carry on doing what it does best. And in order to do that, to make sure that people can have an experience of the wetland and see the wetland animals and plants without disturbing them too much, there are lots of ways of minimizing that impact. So specific walkways or access ways, hides, and zoning your area so you have a lot of activity maybe near the building itself, and you run lots of programs of education or whatever else you're doing there. Some quieter kind of in-between transition phase maybe, where you have quiet walkways and hides looking out onto the wetland. And then in the wetland itself, very little disturbance, where really only you're doing conservation work as an intervention. So, SEPA and wetland centres. What we're really ultimately aiming to do is encourage behaviour change and action through visits to wetland centres. If we haven't done that, I kind of feel like we have failed somewhat in terms of what we're undertaking to do. So where are we asking people to do this action? Firstly, on site, you can see from this picture, there are a couple. The site is in New Jersey in the US, and it's a site which is particularly good for horseshoe crabs and shorebirds. You can see the kids here helping to rescue some of the horseshoe crabs that have been trapped, and that allows them to go back into the sea and spawn and support shorebirds that feed on their eggs. You can also see my colleague Laura there, who is running a lot of volunteering activities and monitoring activities. So again, supporting people to learn how to behave on site, whether that's helping to do a beach clean or count birds or deliver specific conservation activities. So on site is a very important aspect. At home, at school, and at work also, we'd like to see people go home and create a pond or change the way that they use chemicals or use less water wherever they are. And finally, with decision makers, we'd like to see people who are making decisions on land use, for example, or management of wetlands to be doing the right thing. And we do that quite often through campaigns or other activities. Are we getting the right messages across is a good question. We followed, in a particular piece of research work, several of our schools who are delivering and had done a lot of pond dipping work. And we found that, in order to get good messages across, you need to do a lot of work around the existing visit to the site. So work with teachers beforehand, make sure the kids and the schools are already studying this, and afterwards really reinforce that message by going back and doing further work to ensure that they understood what was going on. There are lots of ways, I guess, you can work through wetland centres to deliver this. Firstly, on-site formal learning, again, really having that trained teaching contingent of people who know what they're doing and know how to get those messages across. Getting a health and safety message out so that schools understand it's a safe place to see, and really linking stuff to curriculum and existing teaching structures so that they want to come back and that schools get something. Informal learning, again, many people come because they want a nice visit or a day out. So having good trained interpretation staff that can help to deliver that is good. Providing good walks and talks, self-guided materials as well, and having good exhibition and signage on site. All of these things really helpful for getting messages across to people, not necessarily in a taught way or in a formal way, but in a way where they're still learning, but also. We also use centres, I guess, as a base to then talk to people who live and work around our sites. So being able to go and outreach to other communities or schools or whoever else you're working with is essential, and having those exhibits and portable things that you can take with you are a great way of doing it. So that was just a quick run through of wetland centres. There are obviously lots of ways of getting people into wetlands, and we will discuss some more of those shortly. Thank you very much for listening, and yes, let's carry on with the workshop.
Hello, this is John DeFilippo from the John Bunker Sands Wetland Center in the middle of a 2,000-acre man-made wetland near Dallas, Texas in the United States of America. It's my pleasure to present to you today about our unique wetland and the research and education opportunities that it provides. John Bunker Sands Wetland Center overlooks the southern 800 acres of the East Fork Water Reuse Project. This water reuse project was formed as a public-private partnership between the North Texas Municipal Water District and the Rosewood Corporation, which was a private landowner at the time. This one-of-a-kind 2,000-acre wetland pumps in over 90 million gallons of treated effluent wastewater from upstream every day. As the water flows through the wetland, over 20 different species of native aquatic plants filter out nitrate, phosphate, and ammonia. These constituents are either stored in the tissues of the stems or volatilized back into the atmosphere. Every day, this wetland recycles about 50 million gallons of water, and it is returned to the reservoir of origin, which is about 43 miles north of this location. In the Dallas-Fort Worth area, we have over 8 million people, and is projected to grow to over 16 million people within the next 50 years. This region serves over 2 million people with this particular water project, and prevented us having to build a new reservoir for over a decade. We've had many challenges at our organization during this COVID era. of increasing opportunities for students virtually, but also providing an opportunity for people to explore outdoors. During this time period, we actually opened our doors and our grounds more times than before in past, and we've increased our staffing and our volunteers in order to accommodate our new visitors. One of the most important things of our success is staying focused on our mission, partnering with colleagues around the region, and sharing what we've done here at the John Bunker Sands Wetland Center. And we're sharing that with other nature centers beyond just wetland centers. So it is a great opportunity to teach and learn from each other. As part of the public-private partnership, the John Bunker Sands Wetland Center opened its doors in 2010 to provide education and research opportunities to middle school, high school, elementary school, and college students throughout the region. The main focus of our education programs is about wetland ecology, wildlife management, wetland systems, plant ecology, and especially birds. Historically, this piece of property was a formal cattle ranch, so recreating this one-of-a-kind wetland for water reuse was unique in the region. We have students that come from over 90 miles away in order to learn about the importance of water conservation, not just for wildlife, but for humans as well. Our goal is to increase conservation literacy of water, wetlands, and wildlife in the region and inspire students to help create the next best solution. Our programs are focused on science standards within the state of Texas and throughout the region, and provide opportunities for students to learn about environmental science careers before going to college. We also offer programs to adults throughout the region, specifically on moths, alligators, and snakes in the wetlands, and why this habitat is important close to such a large metropolitan area. Our organization is on the grow. In 2017, our strategic direction changed when our board of directors planned to expand our facility with only 7 years of opening. We've raised funds over the past 4 years to double student capacity with new structures called silos. We're using these grain silos, are refabbed, that look like historic grain silos on the property for new classrooms, new restroom facility, a lawn, and an expanded area where students and visitors can observe their surroundings. During this time of COVID, we've also looked at our revenue and how we can increase opportunities for revenue through weddings, corporate events, and rentals in the area. More and more people started to visit our organization to get outdoors and be exposed to green spaces. So we've added new recreational opportunities like fishing, archery, horseback riding, and canoeing will be soon. The most important thing I've learned during this time is to celebrate our accomplishments and successes within the organization, but also with our colleagues around the region. We share this knowledge with other nature centers, so we can also grow in our capacity of understanding why environmental education is so important and share the passion with students and college individuals so they can create the next best solutions for our water resources. Our partners, the North Texas Municipal Water District and the Rosewood Corporation, along with Texas Parks and Wildlife and U.S. Fish and Wildlife, have helped us make this possible. Thank you for your time today, and I look forward to talking with you soon.
Hello, everyone. This is Amy Lecciones from the Society for the Conservation of Philippine Wetlands Incorporated, or SCPW. I am happy to share with you our flagship SIPA program, the Youth Ecological Camp. In 2004, the CLEAR partnership composed of Laguna Lake Development Authority, Unilever Philippines, and the SCPW was organized with a mission to safeguard the ecological integrity of Laguna de Bai. Our focus was to communicate the importance of the lake to the youth, thus we designed the Youth Ecological Camp. By the way, CLEAR means Conservation of Laguna de Bai's Environment and Resources. Our SIPA objective was to provide a platform for mobilizing and engaging the youth and their communities in wetland conservation. We primarily targeted high school students in the lakeshore towns and in the process also include the schools, their communities, and the local governments. Since 2004, we have conducted 21 youth eco camps in 21 municipalities along Laguna de Bai, involving more than 100 high schools. We also conducted training of trainers and published a manual to facilitate replication. The eco camp has likewise been replicated in at least 9 other wetlands in the country. Some schools conduct their eco camps using our manual and are supported by the local government. With funds from the UN World Food Programme, the curriculum was enhanced to incorporate disaster preparedness and response, as well as nature-based solutions for young audiences. Our most daunting challenge that we face is the existing COVID-19 protocols that do not allow the conduct of eco camps. In fact, our last eco camp was conducted in 2019. We owe the success of this long-running SIPA program to number 1, strong partnerships with stakeholders, number 2, support from the private sector and multilateral agencies, and number 3, replicability and adaptability of activities. The Clear Youth Ecological Camp is designed to engage high school students in conserving the largest inland water body in the Philippines. The 3-day live-in experiential learning-based curriculum includes learning sessions, field exposure activities, and action planning for their school or community-based wetland conservation projects. Former campers formed the Clear Youth Network with now more than 1,000 members across more than 100 high schools implementing wetland conservation projects such as Wetlands BioBlitz, Youth Eco Camps, Plastic Sachet Recovery Program, and Lakbay Kalikasan, among others. The network meets annually through the Clear Youth Network Congress, where former campers report on their previous activities and plan their activities for the ensuing year. Many of our former campers become youth leaders advocating environmental activities in their college campuses and at work for those who are already employed. For our future plans, the SCPW has modified the EcoCamp curriculum for conducting virtual sessions and will be pilot tested this November 2021. The Clear Youth Network Congress will also be conducted virtually in December of this year. Hopefully, we will be able to conduct in-person camps again starting next year. On this note, we would like to thank our partners for their support and this SIPA session for the opportunity to share. Thank you again and have a nice day.
Hello there, my name is Chopin Paul. I am from Sydney Olympic Park Authority. Myself and my colleagues, Viveka McGee and Daniel Lego, will be presenting a very short snapshot of how the Wetland Center at Sydney Olympic Park has been so successful. But first of all, I'd like to pay my respect to the traditional owners of the lands, various land that we are joining in this event. I would like to pay my respect to the elders of the past, present, and emerging, and also pay my respect to any indigenous people who are attending this event. Sydney Olympic Park Wetland Center, actually it started a long time ago in 1988 with the opening of the Bicentennial Park as an environmental education center. There are 28 recognized wetland education centers in Australia, and this is one of the oldest. There used to be a specific building, but now they are spread in the precinct. There are open air classrooms, there are field studies facilities, and the park itself is so centrally located that it is teamed with people. Up to 3.2 million people visit the parklands, and most of that attraction is the wetlands. And that's out of 14 million people who visit in the precinct in a year. So it's the largest school education curriculum program for wetland field education. About 25,000 students come under the curriculum system, up to 3,000 youth Eco Summit, and there are thousands of other students under various education curriculum system. On top of that, there are technical tours and professional training, which is wetland education and training program that we have been running since 2001, and recently it is run under Sydney Wetland Institute banner. So there are diverse programs, gatherings on national and international special occasions, such as like World Wetlands Day, specialized hub for gatherings, Murama healing space for Aboriginal community, and the dancing ground, a cultural event and gathering space. Citizen science programs, Cumberland Bird Observers Group, they have been volunteering for decades now. More than 100 volunteers join each year, helping us with our bird census. The place and the place-centric future programs have been ongoing in various forms and formats. So this place is a self-guided place as well. So there are virtual self-guided programs like could be accessed through our website. There are physical tours and then interpretation signs. There are signs everywhere. One could come and have a read of some contents and then link to the website. And then the website has got a ton of contents, including some ebooks, which are really helpful in trying to understand the place and how it functions. So I'd like to conclude by saying that Sydney Olympic Park Wetland Center has been one of the most successful, effective wetland centers. And then this type of wetland centers really help improving people's awareness and appreciation for the nature, particularly wetlands. And over the last 28 plus years, this has shown its real values and importance in conserving wetlands. Thank you.
Kia ora koutou katoa. I'm Karen Denny from the National Wetland Trust of Aotearoa, New Zealand. I'd like to present to you today a SEPA case study about an outdoor interactive discovery trail that we developed at the Rotopico National Wetland Centre. Rotopico is a beautiful peat lake, swamp and kahikatea forest complex just 2 hours south of Auckland. It's where the National Wetland Trust is working with the local iwi, the local Māori community, Ngāti Apakura, and the wider community to build a National Wetland Discovery Centre. As you can see from the photo, the Wetland Centre building is still a dream, but we have been restoring the site and developing outdoor facilities. The SEPA activity I would like to present here is the Rotopico Wetland Discovery Trail. Our objective was to build a low-cost outdoor trail with hands-on activities to engage visiting children and their guardians, to help them learn about wetlands in a fun and collaborative way. We've also produced students' workbook and teacher's guide that links our trail to the National Education Curriculum. This is a permanent SEPA activity created for families and school groups. The trail is in a reserve, so it's free for anyone who wants to visit. So far, we have installed 10 themed activity stations, with topics including water quality, swamp forestries, wetland birds, insects, fish, and more. At each station is a colourful box, which stores information cards with stories to read, and there's 1 or 2 physical games, things like eels and ladders or mudfish Scrabble. Being a charity, our challenge was to design a flexible low-cost trail that we could enhance and add to as funds and grants allow. But we still need to keep it tidy and replace items, so that's another ongoing challenge. Our centre does not have any on-site staff, so one of the keys to our success was to build a self-guided trail. And by using low-cost materials like laminated cards, we can refresh and replace items as needed. We also kept costs down by engaging the local community to make and install some of our items. The activities were designed by an intern, Noriko Peters, who worked for the National Wetland Trust for a year. Another key to success was to layer the information so younger children can just play the games, while adults or older children can read the information cards or use QR codes to unlock additional features, such as bird calls, while they're at the site. Here's a range of photographs of our Discovery Trail and some of the volunteers who helped us to create it. The laminated cards you see on the left are easy and cheap to update and replace, while the colourful boxes that the cards are kept in attract children of all ages. Finding them is like a treasure hunt. As to our future plans, well, because of the way we designed our trail, it's easy to upgrade and add on to as funds allow. For instance, we created a much more durable version of our bird footprint identification game by replacing the faded footprints that we painted onto a boardwalk with printed aluminium plaques, and we're finding those are lasting much, much longer. We're also seeking funding to add new activity stations. For instance, one focusing on harakeke, which is the swamp flax. It's of huge cultural importance to local iwi. And also one on pika pika, the tiny long-tailed bat that's recently been found at the site. We would also like to develop all of the trail content in our Indigenous language, Te Reo Māori, and also create a complementary ethnobotany trail. Finally, I would like to thank our partners and supporters, including local iwi Ngāti Apakura, and two of our international interns, Kate Dolan from the USA and Noriko Peters from Japan, both of who now live in New Zealand. They had a huge part to play in developing and implementing the trail. I'd also like to thank the local Rotary Club who maintain the trail. And finally, to end my presentation, I would like you to enjoy a 1-minute video showcasing our site. It was produced by Kate Dolan. Thank you for watching.
Wow. Hello, everybody, and thank you so much for all of those case studies and presentations. Just amazing and inspiring, and I'm very, very happy to have you all here with us today. Thanks to start with to the organising group, so Karen and Chris, who are here today, and also thanks to everybody who sent in case studies. We didn't have room, sadly, for all of them. But we managed to squeeze in the ones that we could, and we're very thankful to have had those here today. You'll see a few more of those after the panel discussion. So we have 25 minutes, more or less, to really just have a quick chat about a few questions that we already came up with. So we'll have a think about those. And if anybody has any questions they'd like to put forward, Karen is keeping her beady eye on the Q&A, so she will tell us if any audience members have any questions to ask us. Thank you very much for joining our expert panel. Most of you don't really need an introduction. I think we've kind of heard about the amazing things that you've done already. We have a surprise guest in terms of the Ramsar Regional Centre East Asia. So Ms. Songbo Kim, thank you very much for joining us. Songbo works on the Welly Asia network of wetland centres, so she has a very good knowledge of what's happening across the Asia region. And thank you for joining today, Songbo. So just as a starter question, really, we thought we'd ask people about something very topical. For our wetland centres in the UK, we were very badly hit by the pandemic. When it started, our wetland centres were shut for several months, which was, obviously a very negative impact. But after that, people seemed very keen to come and explore an open space, explore a wetland and be outside. So I was just going to go around the panel really and ask for your perceptions or your experience of how things have changed for you or for wetland centres that you know, given recent developments for COVID or even anything else that may be happening. And I wondered if I could start with John De Filippo from the John Bunker Sands Wetland Center in Texas. John, what are your thoughts or your impressions of how COVID has affected wetland centers?
Thank you, Chris, and hello, everyone. Thank you for this opportunity. It really has affected us. As a small organization, a lot of people gravitated towards our spot because of the open space, the classrooms. Our school programs really took a dive, and we're just now seeing them come back, which is really good news. We're probably still about 25 to 30% under what we would normally do, but our visitorship, or just the general public, has increased about tenfold. We also opened up more opportunities, and we call it social spacing instead of social distancing, so people don't feel like they have to distance from each other, but they can get close to the wetland. And one more thing, we just provided more opportunities for just outdoor exploration. We're seeing people that have never experienced an outdoor wetland like they have here. But the negative part, of course, funding is down. And that is not just donors and fundraising, but also school groups as well. But we're just seeing the uptick.
Okay, yeah, that sounds very familiar. I just realized that I missed Mr. Sir. Mr. Sir, I don't know how I missed you, but welcome as well. I see you're on separately to Songbo, but thank you for joining too. So maybe we'll pass over to Chris Prieto. How has Hunter Wetlands Center fared during this emergency?
Thanks, Chris, and hello, everybody. It's lovely to join you in person. I think one of the things for us is that closed doors has meant no visitors, but it hasn't meant no people. Of course, you can't walk away from a wetland center for a few days without losing track of the management job. So our little team has been there right through, just working safely, but they're just opening up as of yesterday. And so they've got a week to plan for marketing for new visitors. Last time we came out of a lockdown, we were absolutely, not to use a pun, but swamped by visitors. Instantly. They just came out of the woodwork. New visitors, existing visitors, regular visitors. So we expect the same thing to happen. So this week, they're all sort of getting ready for it.
Yeah, bracing themselves for the flood, as it were, yes. Swapan, how about you? The Sydney Olympic Park always looks very, very busy. How did you find it during lockdowns and during COVID?
Right, yeah, thank you. It's been busiest. The busiest it was the parklands immediately after the first outbreak. And as I mentioned in my presentation, we experienced up to 3.2 million people in the parklands, and most of them, almost every single one of them will pass a wetland or a dozen of wetlands. So it was the busiest ever in our parklands this time. So that was one aspect. The second aspect was Sydney Olympic Park happened to be the largest vaccination hub. We had 3 vaccination centers and one delivering up to 10,000 vaccines per day. So by the time they queue up and finish and wait for the friend to get the jab, they would go for a quick walk. So this is the added people. And then we quickly, our education officers quickly discovered that because we couldn't physically visit the students, 25,000 of those couldn't physically come to the site, how can we still make them be here? And that was the virtual thing. Overnight, it was worked out, and then it happened to be the way for other schools to follow. So yeah, no, it was absolutely busy.
Yeah, amazing, isn't it? I think people have really relished getting out of their homes and into somewhere wild and outdoors to enjoy it. So maybe to Ramsar Regional Centre East Asia colleagues, Songbo or Mr. Sir, you've been in touch with a lot of wetland centres and you have one on your doorstep. How have things been for you guys?
First of all, thank you very much, Chris and other panelists. As we are the last minute entry, I would like to avoid eating up much time from our side. So last year, at first, we assumed that most of wellness centers, really Asia members having difficult times, but apparently they were able to adjust to given the COVID-19 situation. And actually last year we were able to circulate a simple question. So how will Asia members coping with COVID-19 situation and regulations by the government? And most of them saying that they were able to develop YouTube content or video content to provide the potential visitors, and also they are providing visiting kit, so not guiding them to the wetland, but providing them the visiting toolkit so that a small number of visitors can do their own activity with the provided toolkit. And on the other hand, we observed that some wellness centers, they are taking the COVID time as opportunity to renovate their wellness centers. Thank you.
Yeah, really interesting, definitely. I have heard a lot about people doing more online courses for students and things like that. But yeah, interesting to hear. I think the same for Slimbridge, where I work, that they spend a lot of time doing upkeep work when they didn't have visitors on site. Mr. Sir, would you like to add anything else?
I would like to add a little bit. Sangbo already covered almost. So we consider this period of suffering as a preparation period for further future. So we have prepared many different programs under our Really Asia. Members visiting a program for each other, and then we sponsor. We share the cost of members to visit, to learn, and also we promote. We adopted. I mean, we introduced one funding program for Really Asia members, supported by a private company, which is called Primera Amore Pacific. So we would like to promote the really further wellness centers in Asia. Now it's a preparation stage. So when the situation is over, then we will directly to attack all the wellness centers and then expand the really Asia membership, and then we'll make it successful. Thank you very much.
To prepare things for the future. Let's hope things ease up a bit. Amy, you mentioned that it had impacted your programs negatively. Have there been any adjustments, or how have you guys coped?
Hello, everyone. Hi, Chris. Thank you. Well, actually, for our eco camps, we'll be doing it virtually. But I would just like to say something about the Las Piñas Parañaque Wetland Park, where we also work. We are part of the Protected Area Management Board, and it is an urban wetland smacked right in the middle of Manila Bay. It's really an urban wetland in Manila. We still get visitors, but the number has really been reduced because most of our visitors actually are school children coming for field trips. And since they are not allowed yet to go out and have, field visits, so the number had been greatly reduced. But also because of the health protocols being imposed in the area at the moment. But during the time last year when the lockdown started, The construction of the other wetland center, the wetland center strata, that will host the museum, the auditorium, and the laboratories and offices continued. So it's almost done. Probably by the end of the year, it will be operational, and we will be ready for WELI Asia conference next year.
Excellent, great.
Over to you,
That's good
Chris.
to hear. Looking forward to that. Yes. So for the other questions that we had discussed, we kind of thought that some of them are generic. You know, they probably impact on most people, but we're going to ask a couple of people each for these. So the first one was really about how we can increase the number of people coming to wetland centres or wetlands and experiencing them without damaging the kind of peace and tranquility of the wetland or the fragile nature of the wetland itself. So we thought that it might be useful maybe to hear from Chris Prieto, first of all, on that.
Thanks, Chris. So one of the things we do, our site really isn't all that big compared to some other wetland sites, Sydney Olympic Park, for example. So there is chance for things to be damaged if there are too many visitors. So it's a balancing act. But one of the things we have done from the very beginning, we've kind of maintained this, is a series of zones. So the closer you are to the building, we take it for granted that most visitors are going to always be everywhere in that inner circle. The next bigger circle is probably a little bit less people, and the farthest out circle is the area that we regard as having the least carrying capacity. That is really delineated by the rookery. So the rookery is not off limits, but at certain times of the year, it is completely off limits. So it's using a zone system and then adjusting those zones according to what might be happening ecologically on the site.
Excellent, great, thank you. Same question to Amy.
Actually, we also use the zoning system at the Las Piñas Parañaque Wetland Park. But aside from that, since the park has just been declared a protected area about 2 years ago, and we're still in the process of coming up with a scheme for visitors. So right now, what's happening is that you have to secure a permit first before you can come to the park. And I think especially for huge crowds, since we get a lot of requests before from schools coming in buses. So that's one way of regulating the crowd so that we won't have too many at the same time. And of course, during this pandemic, this has not been a problem anymore because we are only getting very little visitors. Ideally, there should be a carrying capacity for wetlands, but that's very difficult, of course. Carrying capacity study has been done for the Las Piñas Parañaque Wetland Park, so at least we have some guidance aside from the zoning strategy, of course. Thank you.
Interesting idea of the carrying capacity. Yeah, that's probably a bit of work we should all think about. For Mr. Songbo, it's an interesting thing for you guys as well, because in Suncheon Bay, you know, you had a very, very busy wetland center, and your solution was to create another wetland center between that and the main city, right? Has that had that kind of impact in taking the pressure off Suncheon Bay?
Yes, indeed. The Suncheon Bay, 2 years before the pandemic, the number of visitors a year was increased up to 10 million a year. So it's way over the carrying capacity of Suncheon Bay Wetland Center itself. So Suncheon City created not a wetland center as a part of the entertainment amusement for the visitors. They created a national garden about 8 kilometers away from the Suncheon Bay, and then they make two different routes. They sell a ticket, but the people can visit the National Garden first, and then they can visit the Suncheon Bay later. And then the other way, some people can visit the Suncheon Bay first, and then they can go visit the Suncheon National Garden. So they lower the pressure. So the number of visitors a day went up to about 140,000 a day once the maximum, but it was lower than 70 or 60,000 because of that the effect of National Guard. Thank you.
Excellent, great. Yep, that's a useful thing to hear. We got about 10 minutes left, so I'm going to skip through some of these things. We were asking about how can we measure the positive impacts on people from visiting wetlands? And I think Chris Prieto, you were going to take that one.
Yes, so one of the most successful things we have done, you know, in all the years that I've worked in wetlands, I've seen lots of great initiatives to measure response to visits and visitors, what they've gained. It's very difficult, and sometimes you get a lot of data and then you don't know what to do with it. One of the most successful things that we did was just collecting anecdotal reports. So we gathered a bunch of people in 2 workshops, basically frontline staff, people that greeted people at the door, people that were working on site, as big a variety as we could. And we just asked them to just informally report incidences that they had themselves personally, interactions, which were either very negative or very positive. We collected as many of those, we had discussions around them, and then we gave them to a researcher to analyze. And we got an enormous amount out of that because basically it was natural. It was just whatever came out of people. They weren't asked, they weren't requested to do anything. It was just what people collected from informal interactions. And we really got a terrific lot out of that, about who was coming, what they got out of it, how they shared that with people that were on the site, and then what happened after that. So that's the most successful thing that we've ever done.
Sounds good. Do you have a report for it? Is that something we could share?
We do. We do have a report for it.
Great.
And I could share that with you. Yes, it was quite a good, neat little report as well, and I'd be happy to share that.
Brilliant. That sounds really good. As I mentioned in my kind of introduction, one of the things we want to see from a visit to a wetland centre is some kind of change in attitude and then some change in behaviour. So I wondered if I could ask John whether he has kind of examples of that or how he sees that happening through your wetland centre.
Definitely. In 2017, we did something similar to what Chris just described. It wasn't anecdotal research, but we did a pre and post survey for college students and high school students. 20-question survey that was examining not just their behaviors, but their intention of studying environmental science or studying in wetlands. And then we did a post survey that was about a week later, and then a post 3 months later. And so that data was then shared with us, and we saw, I think, a 6.3% increase in their interest in environmental science, but we also saw an increase in their protection and understanding. It was really just their understanding simply changed their behavior and attitudes. One other quick thing, we have participated in some local research projects about the impact of COVID, not just on our nature center, but other ones throughout the state, and that information is still being gathered. So not really showing the reaction of making a difference in wetlands, but the reaction of how it's helpful through this time.
Great, excellent. And Swapan, again, from your experience, have you seen visits to the Sydney Olympic Park resulting in people changing behaviours and taking action?
People are. The great thing about Sydney is 170 different ethnic communities. They managed to find Sydney their new homes, and Sydney welcomes them. and a majority of those ethnic groups would come and visit Sydney Olympic Park for millions of reasons. And then they would like to also exercise their nostalgia and then their culture and things they saw their grandma doing, and why not this, that, and the other. What this means is that our wetlands, on one hand, they are a melting pot in terms of various things happening, and lots of things are not sort of authorized in that sense because we see pressures on the wetlands. So we say that, okay, can you please not do this, that, and the other, but still enjoy the place, still have a passive recreation and whatnot. So sometimes it throws out as a huge challenge. But then when you talk to them, you engage them in real issues, and then clearly explain to them why this is not really a good practice for the benefit and well-being of the wetlands. And they understand it, and their behavior change and improves. And I have got half a dozen where police got involved and huge other issues. But slowly and gradually, it is improving, it is penetrating through, and then now they are actually our frontline army. They will now report to us, hey, this is something happening over there. Do you know anything about it? So it's a shift around. Yeah.
Excellent. That's very positive to hear, definitely. And just on that point, we were talking also about how you engage with harder to reach groups, maybe ethnic groups or people with disabilities, or people who might not find it so easy to come to the park. Do you have a strategy for how you encourage those people to access the park and to enjoy it?
Me, yes, absolutely. I mean, years ago, we encouraged a disabled group to watch us catching undesirable fish from a front lake. So that fish species we are culling, we are picking out of the wetland, and then them just coming and sitting in their accessible chairs or whatever, watching it. We were told that some people were kept laughing for weeks. Sort of they every now and then they express their body language in a way that excitement continued for weeks, and it's a therapeutic thing happens. So various groups are encouraged, and then we are slowly building it into our actually operational things. We are in the middle of our Vision 2050 that will incorporate people, place, profit, everything, so that we can accommodate more and more diverse groups.
Excellent. That's really, really positive to hear. I think we have a couple of minutes left, Karen. Is that right? I don't know if we have any other comments from the audience, anyone we need to respond to?
Sure, we've had a few comments here. Marinus Boone says he's really enjoying it and it's a really important session, so a bit of thanks from him there. Tanya Jenkins was asking how to access the Rotopico Trail information. If you go to the National Wetland Trust website and look under the National Wetland Centre, you can find out information there. And that's where the QR codes at our activity stations take people. Question from Sherry Campbell saying we've got communities who, or we've got conflicts between wetland protection and water use or other conflicts. How do you actively try to engage with parts of the community who don't support wetland protection? Have you got any tips on trying to engage that perhaps more difficult part of the community?
That's a great question. I'm going to throw that open to the panel. Would anyone like to respond to that? How you actively get people who are maybe not sympathetic to wetlands or actively don't like them?
Okay, I've unmuted my phone, so maybe I'm sure Chris would like to jump in as well. As a quick one is, look, ultimately, if you can give them the right message, people do get the message. So it is about being passionate and then taking the time using the right word, packaging the message in the right way, and then those enemies, they become your friends. It does not take long. So it's about I mean, as I said, we have lots and lots of different experiences of confronting with people, absolutely aggressive people. But as long as you try to be, yeah, listening, try to understand, and then give them the right message, I think it works.
Sounds good to me, Chris.
I can add one little bit here, because we have 28 neighbors whose properties back onto our fence line. So this is a particular group of people that we have been dealing with and negotiating with at times for 30 plus years. And at times everything we do is wrong and they're unhappy with us, but we have recently become the best of friends and all on the same side, because the city council wants to put a bike trail through our property and along their fence lines as well. And none of us are keen on this without some regulation. And so all of a sudden we are on the same side against another now who has become the enemy. So this has helped in a funny sort of a way for us to rejig the conversation with our neighbors.
Excellent. Yeah, that sometimes works, doesn't it? Yeah. Karen, anything else that you think we should respond
I think
to?
we've just got a few minutes for a wrap-up session, Chris. So perhaps we can just turn to you to wrap up the panel, and then we've got a few more case studies to follow in a few minutes.
Definitely, yeah. So I'm sorry it's been such a quick session. It's always really great to have so many knowledgeable people, but yeah, we just didn't have enough time to download everything out of your brains. But I think what I really took from that, I think, is that people who work on this kind of wetland center or engagement approach are all incredibly versatile, resilient, and imaginative people. Just the response, I think, to the COVID situation has shown that people have reacted in a number of ways. Whether that means that they've been taking the time to do productive things whilst their wetland centres have been shut, they've been inactive, whether they've found new ways of engaging people, or whether they've just been managing this kind of increased activity that's happened after the COVID when the lockdowns have shut, has just been incredible, really. I've been really impressed with that. I think the key things about getting people into wetlands is really, as Swapan says, it's about communication, isn't it? It's about knowing your audiences, making the effort to reach out to people and providing something that that they're going to like. And what Amy was saying about, zoning, carrying capacity, ticketing, there's lots of different ways of managing our wetland sites so that we maximize the amount of access people get while still protecting that very precious resource, which is the wetland and the plants and animals that live in it. So it's been really, really useful to have this session. We are going to use some of the case studies for showing on the WELI website as well, so it won't just be ending here. And thank you very much, everybody, for your time and taking part. I'll pass it back to Karen for a final word. Thank you, Karen, for hosting it so well. And over to you to just finish off.
Thank you, Chris. And Chris and Christine were absolutely crucial in organising this event. And as I mentioned, Nunia and Bindi from Fiji, who helped us kick this off as well. Thank you, everyone, for participating in it. I hope you were inspired by the case studies that you've seen, and will be by the next set of case studies coming up, and that you've learned some great tips from our panel. Thank you very much, panel, for being here.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay.
Greetings from Estonia. I'm Elo Raspel. I'm a specialist in Environmental Education Bureau, and I work in Environmental Board, that is Keskkonnamet in Estonia. On this map you can see the 17 internationally important wetlands in Estonia, and maybe you noticed that there are very many of them in western part of our country. That's where I take you with our project. First, I have to mention that our work was a part of a bigger project called Nature Access to All, or NATAC, and that was funded by Interreg Central Baltic Foundation, and the project partners are from Latvia, Estonia, and Finland. And the aim of this NATAC project was to enable tourists with physical, visual, hearing, and cognitive impairment to take better advantage of nature-based tourism sites. So the specific focus is accessibility. So, overview about the specific project called Chest of Senses. That was our role in the NATAC project to create such toolboxes of nature interpretation that can be used for disabled people. These toolboxes focus mainly on the traditional senses like sight, hearing, smelling, and touching. And we also organized a study tour for project partners to learn the best practices used in Denmark. And luckily that was done before the corona interruptions. The target group to the Chest of Senses are people with disabilities who can be local or foreign travelers, and also tourism entrepreneurs, local municipalities, nature parks, and non-governmental sector are important target for us. The outcome are toolboxes. We call them the Chest of Senses, or meeltematas in Estonia. And there are 3 types of the chests, which focus on specific nature theme: forest, bog, and coastal area. All these toolboxes are based on Western Estonian wetlands nature, and we also consider that trails should be accessible for disabled people, for example, on wheelchairs or blind people. Now, more than 30 such toolboxes are ready and waiting users in nature centers in Estonia and Latvia. You can rent them or use them inside nature centers. The challenges during this project were quite many, as we didn't find any similar solution supporting our idea. There was a lot of brainstorming how and what can be done, and also cooperation was much more needed. And due to COVID restrictions, all the face-to-face meetings were difficult, and so the process took more time than we expected. And also some technical difficulties we had to face, for example, how to get durable braille printings and tactile cards. The keys to success of the making of those Chest of Senses was a good cooperation with the design agency called Velvet, and also Estonian Chamber of Disabled People. So inside the pockets of the toolboxes, we have simple access for users, and the users can be young, old, and it's interesting for everybody. The Chest of Senses can be used in learning activities both indoors and outdoors, and the target group is wide, and any season is good for them to use. So here are the pictures of the Chest of Senses and what's inside there. They can be used as backpacks, so it's easy to take them outside. And the brown backpack theme is bogs. The grey one is coastal area, and the green chest of senses is about forest. So inside there are many smaller parts hidden in the boxes. That these things you can smell, you can touch, you can hear. If you don't hear, the sign language translation can be used, and also tactile and braille cards are used. The realistic photos of the species are tactile, and it's very interesting, all those theme boxes. Later you can check out the book, Chest of Senses video, and then you can get a better idea what's inside there and how it can be used. So taking part of the NATAC project was very good. The awareness of accessibility theme is much better now, and I hope we can take it to environmental sports everyday work. For example, planning nature trails, doing information boards, and organizing events in nature. Thank you for listening. Bye-bye.
Good day, everybody. My name is Fabiola Riva Melofiro. I'm from Peru. I live in Lambayeque. I'm the director from the Environmental Education and Awareness Program in Corvidi. From 2017 to 2019, we conducted a migratory shorebird and wetlands festival about Eten wetlands. We held them in the main square of the closest town, Ciudad Eten, to bring the wetlands closer to the people, raising awareness and empowering them. We also trained teachers and students in wetlands, developed education material for dissemination, made alliances with various conservation institutions to enhance our festival, and painted artistic cultural murals. In 2020 and this 2021, we have carried out virtual festivals for the pandemic with information about Eden wetlands, having included San Jose wetlands. We made alliances with local education authorities. We are currently and officially training about 80 teachers. We continue to develop educational material based on our biodiversity research. In 2022, we want to return to Inside Festival in Ciudad Eten and San Jose. Lambayeque's coastal wetlands are not protected. Two of the four we have are threatened. The authorities are not very committed to their protection. Their main threats are relentless encroachment and land trafficking. They are also used as dams. The disorganized advance of agriculture and cattle ranching and the lack of knowledge of the local community about their importance and indifference towards them. Our project title is Migratory Shorebirds and Wetlands Festival in Lambayeque, Peru. Our SEPA objectives are educate and raise awareness concerning the local wetlands ecosystems to the local community, leaders and authorities. The elaboration of outreach material for teachers and local community, empower local people to be the guardians of their natural resources. Our target groups are local people living near the wetlands, teachers and students from Lambayeque, local authorities, and community leaders. Outcomes. Inside Festival. Train teachers and students in wetlands. There's 8 learning stations. Topics are shorebird, seabird, feeding, migration, wetlands festival, threats, commitments, wetlands, tombola, ruffle, storytelling, illusionist, magician. And in our virtual festival, teacher training, online festival with videos of the learning stations and stories, games, activities to download, artistic mural paintings. Our challenges are raising awareness and involving local and regional authorities, stopping relentless encroachment, reversing garbage dumping in a region that has no sanitary landfill, legally protecting Lambayeque's wetlands, getting the company that provides water to maintain the oxidation ponds, obtaining funding every year. Keys to success. empowering local community about the importance of their wetlands, making an agreement with the Regional Education Department in Lambayeque in order to train teachers every year, generating educational and diffusion material for teachers and community, conducting research of the biodiversity of local wetlands. Here are some of our photos of our festivals. Future plans. Signing an agreement with the Regional Education Department in Lambayeque and the municipality of San Jose, updating the agreement with the municipality of Eten, holding the fourth Inside Festival in Eten and the first in San Jose, developing more material with content of local biodiversity for teachers and community. Our partners nowadays are the U.S. Forest Service, Humedales Costeros Initiative, the Regional Education Department in Lambayeque, and our volunteers from the Environmental Education and Awareness Program in Corvidi. If you want more information, there are two emails, our web page and our fan page in Facebook. I want to thank my team that shared with me some photos and a map. I want to thank you for listening to me.
My name is Nicoleta Marin, and I am a ranger at Văcărești Natural Park in Bucharest, Romania. Văcărești is the largest green space in the city, and our slogan is Nature at your door. Văcărești is a fairly new wetland with an interesting story of how nature reclaimed back land left abandoned for over 30 years. Since the park was officially given the status of a natural park in 2016, we have worked on ways to encourage communication, education and public awareness. Our best example of this was the development of an urban biodiversity trail. We created the trail with visitors in mind. We wanted to ignite curiosity in both the young and old and ultimately get them interested in the wealth of biodiversity in the park. Our objective was to create a trail that would engage the community and introduce visitors to a number of our important species in a cost-efficient way. We were pleased with the final trail and the program of free guided tours, especially with the schools here, helped to promote the new trail to the community and brought many more people to the park. We have a program of replacing damaged sign and maintaining the trails to ensure the trail remain appealing to all. Here are some photos of us creating the Urban Biodiversity Trail. It includes 9 color dual English-Romanian information panels covering different classifications such as bird of prey, waterfowl, aquatic animals, reptiles, mammals, trees, as well as a specific panel dedicated to otters. We have also a bird height, 2 observation panels and a visitor information point. We have many future plans, such as creating new educational infrastructure as a pond dipping experience for kids, making the urban biodiversity trail accessible for people with disabilities, a night sky observation points, and many more. The challenges of the pandemic have put on hold a number of our classes and workshops, which we also hope to revive. Also, we are now in the process of building the national network of urban natural areas, having the example of Văcărești Natural Park in mind, together with other organizations throughout the country. For more information, please email us on the details shown here.